Organizations that define CX as their contact center. My good friend, one of the founders of the field, Lou Carbone, he said that's like sucking exhaust on a vehicle.
B2B normally is always behind the consumer level experiences, but I think aim to give a consumer level experience, right? At the end of the day, we're still dealing with humans.
Real customer experience management comes from understanding the desired emotional state that customers hope to achieve by engaging with your organization.
The organizations that get ahead, the innovative ones, the ones that are continually pushing the boundaries of improving the customer experience, managing that experience, and continually growing that loyalty.
If I get a great haircut at my barber, I'm not going next week and go, looking elsewhere. And the same as B2B setting. It's hard. The switching costs are terrible.
Tom DeWitt is the Director of Customer Experience Management at Michigan State University and the Academic Program Director for the Master of Science in Customer Experience Management. With extensive experience in hospitality management across the USA and Asia, Tom brings a unique blend of industry and academic expertise to shape innovative CX education programs. He also co-hosts the Tom and Bob Show podcast, where he delves into topics on customer experience and management. Join us for our conversation with Tom DeWitt.
Well, welcome to the podcast, Tom. It's great to have you on, and I'm excited to get into our conversation today. I know you've had a lot of experience around the customer experience management side of things as well, and had a long career. So, welcome to the podcast.
It's great to be here.
Awesome. For those that may not know about your background, give us a short summary of your career to date so far.
Sure. So I'm the founder and director of CXM at MSU, which is an industry-facing entity based at Michigan State University in the U.S. Our mission is to advance thought and practice in the field of customer experience management with a heavy emphasis on management. We do so through regular industry conferences, both in person and online, as well as monthly webinars. I'm also the founder and academic program director for North America's first academic program in customer experience management at an accredited university, our Master of Science in Customer Experience Management degree.
Yeah, awesome. It's impressive, and definitely some good accolades there, and that's what was interesting to me of obviously that program and what you designed there around customer experience management. And I wanted to get into that a bit deeper from your perspective and understand a little bit more. How would you define customer experience management?
What's interesting is that management isn't included more when we refer to the industry. It's always referred to as CX, and people tend to think of journey maps and data gathering and surveys, right? When they think of customer, that's not managing the customer experience. That's responding to the customer or reacting to the customer experience. CX initiatives don't fail from a lack of journey maps and survey data. They lack from a lack of leadership alignment, a lack of employee engagement, a lack of strategy, a lack of objectives. So to me, customer experience management is literally making the customer experience a managed process. I think we're all familiar with what customer experience is defined as, whether it's all the encounters a customer has with an organization, all perceptions that they have of an organization. That's a pretty broad responsibility. And, to do that without integrating customer experience into an organization's business model, without aligning CX goals with business goals, without understanding and evaluating the role of employees in that process. But typically, that's why CX initiatives fail. So while we get all caught up talking about AI and all the latest trends and so forth, generally it's the basic principles that organizations fail on. I mean, in fact, today, I think probably the number one topic in the field is demonstrating how the customer experience function has an impact on business outcomes. The outcomes that the leadership is evaluated, revenue, profitability, cost reduction, growth and market share, and so forth. So I know at our upcoming conference, that's the most widely delivered topic is, I think the days of going to the C-suite and beating the NPS drum and trying to educate everyone on CX are over. I mean, CX roles and functions are being eliminated globally, largely because of the inability to demonstrate the financial impact of CX. And again, you can only do so by making it a managed process.
Yeah, I understand that. And so, but at the end of the day, the essence of it still is that we're managing the customer experience, and it becomes a holistic approach rather than, would you say it's more proactive rather than reactive, right? It's not just about, as you say, looking in the rearview mirror and going, oh, what could have we done better, etc. In regards to that, it's more about looking, okay, how do we, even if we are, we might be getting great numbers now, or we may have even great reviews and that kind of thing now, but we're always continually looking to improve managing that experience. Would that be correct? It's proactive, not reactive?
Well, absolutely. Organizations that define CX as their contact center or as a software platform for their survey data. My good friend, one of the founders of Field, Lou Carbone, he said that's like sucking exhaust on a vehicle, because that's all you're doing is responding. If all you're doing is journey mapping to identify pain points, again, you're just reacting. Real customer experience management comes from understanding the desired emotional state that customers hope to achieve by engaging with your organization, and the dutiful design of the experience designed to deliver on that emotional state. So you're getting out in front of it. And surveys should really be measuring performance against a design that was based on customer needs and wants and expectations. So you're absolutely right. It should be proactive. It shouldn't be reactive. And I think by doing so, you're really creating a position for yourself within the organization, because then what you're doing when you look at your journey map, we're not just looking at fixing things. We're looking at each touch point, how are we helping to increase profitability by reducing costs, by reducing customer frustration, by creating greater opportunities. So I totally agree with you. And I think no disrespect to the survey providers out there, and I won't mention the vendors. There's a place for them. But I think business owners and operators were sold a false bill of goods when they were told that this is going to solve all your problems, And by calling it a customer experience platform, it's not a customer experience platform. It's a data analytics platform. And we need that. But, what often happens, you hear from organizations, we have so much data, we don't know what to do with it. That comes from not being strategic, right? If you do the front end of the work and, you've done your design work, you've done your research, you formulated research objectives because you know what information that you need and want to evaluate your performance, whether it's customer data or employee data, then you don't have too much data, right? You have the data you need and want to answer the questions that you have. And I think, there's been this exhaust-driven approach that starts with a customer complaint and works its way backwards. That's just counterintuitive. I know naturally you do want to respond and you do want to learn and you do want to innovate, but it's executing on qualitative research, utilizing qualitative research to really understand why do customers engage with your organization? What problems are they trying to address? What is their emotional state now? What's the difference between their actual and their desired state? And that's another thing we don't talk about enough in this industry is emotions. You can't boil down someone's experience with your organization to a few numbers. We make decisions every day as consumers with a desired emotional state in mind. It's not just about rational, where we tick off our satisfaction boxes as we go to a restaurant or a movie or a vacation. We describe the outcomes of those in emotional terms, right? Going to a restaurant is very much an emotional thing. You don't have to moan when you eat, but when you see a plate of food or when you engage with the environment, there are emotional responses associated with that. And those are things that we desire. So it's really, Lou calls it a experience motif. And that motif is really a reflection of what the customer wants to feel, not how we want them to feel about our brand, right? And that's what we've been taught all along is, that's very much a sales-driven approach. Here's our brand. This is how we want people to feel about our brand. No, that's not the way the world works, not from a consumer's perspective, right? It's more about, why go places because it's how I want to feel. How I want to feel about myself and how I want to, what I desire from that. And I think we've lost that. And this, focus on journey maps and survey data, I think, journey maps have been helpful and it's a great start. And we're integrating more and more things into journey mapping as it relates to emotions. But it shouldn't, those emotions shouldn't just be reflective of someone's satisfaction or dissatisfaction, satisfaction or dissatisfaction at a touch point. It should be based on their desired emotional states. So, for example, if you think about healthcare, which is particularly interesting because people enter into the process in a negative emotional state, and they're looking for those issues to be resolved and leave with positive emotions. The complexity of a healthcare experience is particularly interesting, and look how those emotions evolve as they move through the system. Yeah, I think that's where we are as an industry. We're at a turning point right now where I think there's broad recognition in the industry about the inadequacy of quantitative data. We're moving more and more to qualitative data and understanding it. We're capturing video and other forms of data that examine facial expressions and voice tone. So, we're getting more into emotions, but it shouldn't, to your point, it shouldn't just be reacting to that. They look angry, they look mad. It should be about, well, when you get on an airplane, and I have a problem when airlines think that their primary job is getting people from point A to point B. There's a lot more invested in that. Where are we going and why? Airports are another thing that are stressful, and most people don't like getting on planes. Well, why is that? How do they hope to feel, and what can we do to make them feel more comfortable and excited and so forth.
Yeah, I think to me, I agree. I think there's a big difference between, breaking it down simply between being proactive versus reactive. That's one thing. And there's, I totally agree. I think there's for us and from our side, more, the work that we kind of do on this is that it's a big part of the expectation in the last, let's say, decade has been the digital transformation side of things in regards to what's available from a customer perspective. And that's kind of where we roll in regards to, we need to be managing that as well now, not reacting kind of 3 years later, 2 years later, when, when these expectations are already well and surpassed. And once things get to a point where they are expected, which is, what you're talking about, and, we're just delivering that at that point, we're really reacting again. We're not actually proactively addressing anything or managing that entire experience. But I did want to touch off on, we've obviously talked about, it being a holistic view and being proactive in managing that, and obviously looking at, the emotional state that people are wanting to get to and why people are engaging with us. Agree with all of those things. But I wanted to touch off on with the digital transformation and the technology advancements, and what impact you feel that has had on the expectations from customers, if that makes sense, as to how far it's come in, we only have to look 5-10 years back, and the difference now is that, even from a customer experience perspective and managing that, is that as a consumer, especially a younger, what is cliche, I feel, but referred to as I'm a digital native, right? And essentially the idea of that is that my expectation at a minimum is that I can do everything myself as self-service with any company I'm dealing with. And now I do want the ability to contact someone should I need help, but that doesn't mean customer experience like you talked about earlier, right? That doesn't, just because you have a contact center does not mean that I'm having a great customer experience with you, and that, that's solved all your issues. So what are your thoughts on kind of the technological advancements and digital transformation on expectations from the customer side?
Yeah, great point. Some people call it the Amazon effect. It's snowballing. It's and I think maybe it didn't begin with Amazon, but I think Amazon really popularized the fact that it's about consumer empowerment, right? To your point, I want, when I see what's possible, the ability to search for information, to search for products, to evaluate alternatives, to place the order, to have all my payment options there and managed for me, to the transparency of the process, the processing of my order and delivery and everything. It's created this expectation on a consumer side that bleeds over into every organization we engage with, even if we're in a B2B setting. So if 100%. I can sit here and look through the menu for pizza, like I'm a big fan of Domino's Pizza app, if I can order my pizza and then I can see the pizza tracker and I know exactly when to get in my car and go to pick it up, or if your delivery and knowing exactly when it's going to hit my door. We carry that into all experiences and expecting that level of transparency. The same can be said. I had this epiphany a couple of weeks ago. I met with my financial advisor, and he took all of my financial data, all my investments, all my goals and everything. And it all boiled down to this incredible dashboard I now have, that the visual display and the projections and the charts and everything. And, it provided me with a lot of reassurance about my financial future. But being a regular healthcare patient, I have type 2 diabetes. It made me realize that, why do I have a better reflection of my financial health than I do my actual own physical health? And when I log into the portal with my healthcare provider, all I can do is access my latest test results or my prescriptions, but there's no information there, similar to my financial performance. I should have projections based on all of my data and all the data out there. Life expectancy, or, what are the things I should be it should be able to, given the technology, monitor my exercise patterns, and using Google, was it, oh, okay, the Google workout or whatever, that monitors how many steps you take. All that should be integrated, and I should have the information like that helps to inform me and reassure me to my personal health. So I think what you've seen with technology is this, I think it's technology in lockstep with increasing consumer expectations and empowerment. And I think that's reality. You can attribute a lot of that to Google. You can pretty much Google anything. So consumers come into experience better educated than ever before. But, I have conversations with people in different industries, including in B2B. And one thing I always tell them, I said, if you're really looking to make a marked improvement in your customer experience, you can't restrict yourself to looking in your industry. You've got to look outside your industry. So if you're in healthcare, don't simply be in the healthcare lane and look at what Cleveland Clinic or the Mayo Clinic or whatever they're doing. You've got to look outside your industry, because that's where customer expectations come from. And I was encouraged to see not that long ago that now there's emergency rooms in hospitals that are taking appointments. Although I kind of wonder if you're in that much pain, whether you've got time to make an appointment. But it's thoughtful, at least, to know that, people need to understand that you do, you manage all of your relationships, many, if not most of your relationships, through your phone and through an app. And why not? Why can't I do the same on my doctor's office? Why do I have to call them and identify the doctor's availability and when it fits my schedule? Why can't I do the same thing I do with a Calendly link, where I can click on a link and it can sync with my Outlook calendar and I can identify a time? So that's a reflection of that empowerment and that expectation that consumers have. And businesses that don't recognize that are going to fall by the wayside.
Yeah, I agree. I totally agree. And I think a big point that you've touched on there as well is even the B2B side of things, right? And that's where we do the majority of work, not exclusively, but the majority of what we do is in B2B. And but it doesn't matter. Like the expectation nowadays is the ability is that, okay, I know you can do it. I know you've got the ability to be able to do it. The expectation is that, if I'm working with you in B2B, then it doesn't matter, as you say, like you need to look outside. I think what you put there is really, really
you have to look at how people order their food, how people order products online, how they're able to track that, and if they get better results from, a local restaurant chain or then why are they doing business with you? So in fact, I get questioned by B2B. They look at our conference and they go, well, I don't see a lot of B2B presentations. And I'm like, okay, what's your point? Most of what you do, I would say 80% of what you do, the principles apply in the B2B world, they apply in the B2C world. But if you really want to innovate, you can't continue just looking at the B2B market. You've got to go to the B2C presentations and say, okay, that makes sense. And also, even if you're in a B2B relationship, the greatest value you can provide to your customers is helping to provide value to their customers. So you need to not just be concerned about B2B relationships. You've got to understand B2C relationships and how you can help in partnering with your customers to provide better value to their customers. So it's B2B to C, right? And by, and I've heard this about sometimes the UX people. This is our world. I'm only concerned about UX. I don't want to recognize that UX is a subset of CX. Or the reality is, from the consumer doesn't care, right? So I always, I encourage my industry partners, regardless of industry, to look, or regardless of B2B or B2C or industry, to look outside and not just look within.
Yeah, I totally agree, and I think it's a massive thing, and I think B2B is behind as usual. It normally is always behind the consumer level experiences, but I think the aim should be, in when we're working with B2B businesses, it's like aim to give a consumer level experience, right? At the end of the day, without being cliche, we're still dealing with humans, right? We're still,
Yeah.
They've got expectations from the B2C side, so it's not too far out of reach. Yes, there's complications there's much more complex processes. Sometimes things take a lot longer and all of that, which is totally understandable. That is the case, but we still need to be aiming for that level of experience, and it is still possible for us to do that. It's not impossible. We just need to work out, how we're going to do that, and how do we actually achieve that. And I think this one thing I say is this isn't slowing down, right? This is only becoming more and more. It's only accelerating faster and faster. The expectations are only growing quicker and quicker. And when things like AI come in, yes, everyone's got their opinion on that. And some people are saying there is no use cases for it. Others say it's going to put everyone out of a job, but I'm somewhere in the middle, as most people. But at the end of the day, there is going to be an impact. That's one thing that no one can deny. It's going to impact, things. We don't know exactly how. We're already seeing some things happen, but there's, businesses that aren't even, I would say, digital first is the way I would describe it, with their customer experience management overall, and their ability for customers to perform what they need to perform. They are well behind, years behind in that, let alone these other things that are rapidly advancing. And I think the most important thing today is that you've got this technology available to you to manage this customer experience. What are you doing about utilizing it and actually taking advantage of it, so you are, I suppose, successful in that?
Yeah, and it gets back to what I mentioned early on. It's understanding desired customer outcomes. And, for people that say, well, I'm in a B2B setting, we don't need to do customer personas, we don't need to do empathy mapping with garbage. You're still working with people, and you're working with people who have expectations. They have time constraints, they've got financial constraints, they have desired emotional states. It may be more complex because you're dealing with a buying team rather than an individual. But all the more reason to be able to understand people on a personal level. And as we talked about previously, the extent to which their consumer experiences are shaping their expectations in a B2B world. It's kind of like my revelation between financial services and healthcare. Where I'm like, given all the money involved in healthcare, why haven't they figured it out yet, right? Why haven't they simplified this and presented all this information in a way that I can easily understand? And I'm sure in a B2B setting, buyers feel the same way. If I can get this level of information and empowerment and transparency and ordering pizza or whatever it might be, why can't I get this in my business relationship where we're talking about hundreds of thousands, if not millions of dollars? I think we're all aware of the GPS and tracking and video streaming and everything. So, why not translate all that into logistics and to the ordering process? I can remember back when I worked in the real world, what a revelation it was to move from. I worked in the food service business. And back then, you placed your orders one of two ways. You either sat down with a salesperson who went down a list, or you called it over the phone, which, in today's world sounds incredibly inefficient. And I still remember, now this was in the mid 90s when internet was just starting and PCs were just starting, when we were just starting to move to online ordering. And that was 30 years ago. So imagine now what the expectations are with the use of technology. And of course, now, when we talk about business communication, here we are over Zoom, right? A primary form of business communication today. Yeah, we still rely on email. But it's interesting how Zoom calls have replaced phone calls, and how remote work has replaced being in the office every day. Thanks largely to COVID, which proved that people could be just as productive, if not more productive, if they were at home. So, yeah, I think that, the reality is things are going to continue to evolve, and AI is an indication. I'm glad you called out AI. AI is great at some things, but not so great at others, right? So if we're organizing data, or you need to write something, AI can do that for you, but it's still struggling in chatbots. There are a lot of complaints about chatbots. I know personally, my bank switched from in-person chats, where I was chatting with a real person, to something driven by a chatbot, and it's very frustrating. I can't get straight answers on the things that I want to know, but I'm sure that's going to evolve and get better too.
Yeah, definitely. There is definitely those challenges, and I think there's a few things with, obviously, that need to be improved, etc. But those things are coming, and if we look back only a couple of years in how far even ChatGPT and OpenAI are the mainstream ones, but there's others and other models with Anthropic and that are coming out now. Well, not just coming out, but are continuing to improve and are incredibly impressive as well. I want to touch off on some points around customer-centric culture and what you feel about that, and what you would say defines truly like a customer-centric culture, because I think a lot of these initiatives and these things start at the obviously, well, they have to start at the executive level. They have to start the leadership of the organization to say, okay, we are truly putting the heart of the customer at what we do. And a big part of what I've seen in this whole customer experience management, if that's the way I want to put it, but essentially is that the leaders of the organization either don't regard it that much, and aren't really caring about it too much, and don't realize the impact that is having, or they think they know what customers' expectations are, and they think they are managing it, when in fact they aren't. And there is a massive disparity between what they think is going on and what they think the right thing to do is, and all of this, between what the actual reality is. And you find out that they haven't even taken the time to do that research on the expectations, sit down with the customers and really get, I suppose, independent as much as possible, and try and figure out, okay, not just what have we done in the past and have we been good enough kind of thing, but looking forward and saying, okay, where do we need to go from here and where do we grow from here? But even into touching on things like services and other things that could potentially be delivered alongside what they're currently doing, that they may have no idea, the customer's expecting from them.
Yeah, there's this tendency that, and I even avoid the word culture, because I think when people talk about culture, they think it's it's the atmosphere in the organization, and somehow that's going to permeate itself into your operating practices. Organizational customer centricity is putting is an operating strategy. It's when you say putting the customer at the center of everything you do, it's literally everything that you do. And it's responding, to your point, it's responding in a way that reflects your understanding of customer needs. But, it's, I I do this exercise whenever I meet with business people. I poll them on a scale of 1 to 10, with 10 being very customer centric and one being the opposite. Where would you put your organization? And they tend to put themselves right around an 8.5 or a 9. And then I administer a 3-dimension, 15-item measurement scale created by this think tank in Switzerland. It's called the Customer Centricity Score. It has 3 dimensions: leadership, collaboration, and implementation. But basically what it is, it's a set of operating practices that are consistent with a customer-centric organization. And when I administer that, it just falls apart. Leadership is okay because it's, it is about prioritizing customer satisfaction along with financial goals. It is about, talking the talk and walking the walk and so forth. But when you get into people working across departments or organizational silos, tracking the understanding and tracking the entire customer journey, liberally sharing customer data across the organization, encouraging risk-taking, and meeting customer needs and empowering employees, you find it's a house of cards. So, and that's why, I don't like culture, because there's this tendency that people think of culture as kind of something that's not tangible. And I prefer to look at the tangible things, to look at the practices. And there are more comprehensive scales. I know Market Culture, based in Australia, they have an 8-dimension scale that includes things like competitor intelligence, not just customer intelligence and what we know about our customers, but also what we know about our competitors and their ability to meet their customers' needs. So that takes it one step further, right? And it's that comprehensive approach that organizations need to take. I think the other danger is a lot of organizations, they adopt customer experience as a strategic imperative because they think it's the right thing to do, but they don't always understand what that entails. And they often create a customer experience function within their organization, and it quickly becomes the dumping ground on which anything related to the customer goes. So basically, any responsibility a department had for the customers, they go, oh, now we got a department for that. We can send it all over there. And that's the complete opposite of the role of a customer experience function. It's really to help to get people to work across the organization and to address the multifaceted nature of customer centricity. That's laid out by the CC score or Market Culture's Market Responsiveness Index. We're really there. It's kind of like we have a team-based learning model in our master's degree. And the role of the instructor, you're there as a facilitator of the learning process to help people to learn from multiple sources. And I view that the same as a customer, of the chief experience officer or chief customer officer. They need to be in the C-suite. They need to be reporting to the CEO who's bought into all this. But their job really is to facilitate the understanding within the organization about where all departments impact the customer in their journey and in their life, and to understand the profitability or the cost that each has, and getting people to work across the organization, hopefully through the formalization of a governance structure that includes representatives from across the organization. So that's a Herculean task, right? And I envision a future too, particularly given the role of customer reviews and decision making. I grew up in a world where you're advertised to, it influences you or persuades you, and then you make your decision. In today's world, we seek out information as consumers. We draw on, the majority of customers draw on reviews when making consumer decisions on a daily basis. And the majority of consumers trust the opinion of someone they don't know, a third party they don't know, or over your advertising. And those reviews are the outcomes of their experiences. So given that understanding, I see marketing and operations collapsing on one another to one function in a business. And that's managing the customer expectations, because that's what we're doing. We're managing customer expectations. There's some companies that are extremely good. In the U.S., I think about Chick-fil-A, that invest a lot up front in hiring, awarding the right franchisees. They do create a really strong customer-centric culture that's reflected in the behaviors of their employees. But it's also the operating practices, the standards. It's a responsiveness to customer needs. We saw it during COVID here when everybody was struggling to try to figure out their business model in the food service industry, whether it was going to be delivery or carry out, and what do we do with lower staffing and whatnot. Chick-fil-A excelled because they had people, they set up tents. They had people with iPads out there taking customer orders. They're redesigning their processes. They were really proactive in that. So anyways, I know we got a little off track there, but I think, it's lip service to customer centricity. It's not enough to put a chair at the table and ask yourself, what would the customer say, or what would the customer want? It's getting people in accounting and sales and all these other departments to understand, how do you impact the customer in a positive way, even if you don't directly impact them. So internal customer, it's understanding how your actions towards an internal customer ultimately impact the customer. And it's valuing that, and the thing that I think is lost on most people is that most human beings, they relish that. They enjoy that. When I run the customer centricity score measurement scale alongside an employee engagement scale, the two are highly correlated, as they should be. The more I feel like I work for a company that cares about the customer, and that's what drives business every day, not selling widgets and meeting the latest profit goals or share price goals, the more I feel fulfilled in my role, right? The more I have the opportunity to collaborate with people across the organization and meeting customer needs, the more I feel engaged with my role. So this is why I get really frustrated with organizations, because particularly organizations that are just fixated on their NPS score and they take so much glory in that. But when you ask them, well, how do you deliver on those numbers? What are you doing in your organization? They can't explain it because they don't seem to care. As long as they got that great number up there.
Yeah, I think it's important. I agree with that. I think that a key point as well is truly knowing how you're managing your customer experience. You would know if you're managing those metrics right, the EBITDA or the other metrics, the share price you talked about, these other things will take care of themselves essentially. And it's not to say that those things aren't important to track, but at the end of the day, if we focus on...
Well, they are, and common sense dictates that unhappy customers go elsewhere, right?
Yeah, absolutely.
We do.
Yeah.
And all the data shows it. We don't complain. 95% of customers, we go someplace else, right? But common sense isn't very pervasive in the C-suite. In fact, a good friend of mine who's in senior leadership, and we were talking about data visualization in the C-suite. And you know what he told me? Green is good, red is bad. That's all they want to see. That's all they have the time for. They don't want to understand why, and that's why I won't need to name companies, but that's why, certain companies, they migrated towards capturing video testimonials from customers instead of just providing verbatims, because the senior leaders weren't reading the verbatims.
Yeah, interesting.
But they got to watch the video where the emotions were there, right? But, and that's part of the problem too. If your KPIs, if you're a senior leader and your KPIs are all based on sales, and that's why we're moving as an industry away from demonstrating the ROI of CX to literally demonstrating, to go to the C-suite and say, you're losing you're losing $2 million a year right here every year. We can fix that, right? Or demonstrating how through customer loyalty, we've increased customer purchases by creating price insensitivity because people are married to our brand, or they've incorporated aspects of that experience into their value proposition. But it is this desire in the C-suite to see an oversimplified view of data without all the details, which it's a problem. So it does create the need to create, to be more creative in how we report data.
Yeah, I agree with that. I agree with we shouldn't be oversimplifying things. One thing I will say is obviously at the end of the day, we need to be at the end of our business is in, unless you're a not-for-profit, a business is in business to make a profit, and we need to make a profit. We need to be a sustainable business, but the way we do that is by improving the customer experience, managing that experience, and continually growing that loyalty, etc. And to me, the organizations that get ahead, the innovative ones, the ones that are continually pushing the boundaries of, without being cliche, but what's possible, are that the executives and leaders do care about understanding that, they do care about managing that customer experience, and they understand there's obviously different metrics here from a business outcomes perspective, but we also understand why, the customer experience management and how that is driving those, and is contributing to that business, the business outcome. And you touched off on a couple of those things there as well, as to, for example, maybe it's positioning it in a different way where it's like, okay, we're dropping 2 million here, and we could potentially pick that up, or there is an opportunity over here if we did X, Y, and Z, which is definitely a significant contributor to those things. And I think those metrics are super important. And I did want to, you touched off on a little bit there as well, but how would you recommend, how do you quantify that CXM success then? I know you mentioned you can't just be all about sales, etc., but you gave a few examples there.
Well, it can be about sales, but I think it's being able to demonstrate both in the transaction and over time how effective customer experience management leads to customer purchases, where it leads to how it reduces customer churn, how it looking at the lifetime value of the customer, because most businesses are still stuck in this very transactional model, right? We pump money into marketing and we see a result in sales, repeat and recycle, right? With little, if you look at the customer life cycle, there's very little attention given to the service and loyalty phases, particularly the loyalty phase, and how customer expectations change over time. If I've been with a company 3 to 5 years, potentially, if loyalty is a function of repeated satisfactory encounters, which means the need for consistently delivering on customer expectations in simplest terms. There's also an emotional element to that that's related to human interactions and those emotional outcomes that we talked about previously. But it's understanding, at the leadership level, how the organization benefits from a customer who is 3 years, 5 years, 10 years into a relationship. As consumers, we crave monogamous relationships. We're not looking to leave, but businesses give us reasons to leave every day, right? I don't, if I get a great haircut at my barber, I'm not going next week and go, looking elsewhere. And the same is true of restaurants and everything. In a B2B setting, it's hard. The switching costs are terrible. But if you give me enough reasons why, I'm gonna go. Yeah. Conversely, if I value you in so many ways, you anticipate my needs before I ever think about it. You're my partner. We're strategically aligned. Whatever. Any attempts to get my business, I'm gonna block out. And I think it's this, it's this what businesses are wedded to short-term goals. They're wedded to this repeat and recycle model. They ignore that value of the lifetime of the customer, and they fail to acknowledge the length of the relationship, and they fail to acknowledge the loyalty that's there, and the need for personalization and customization that comes along with it too. But the reality is, the longer we're with an organization and the more we value what they've done for us, and it can be the little things. I've been a customer of a Capital One now for about 6 months, and I found some fraud attempts on my card on Sunday, and I talked to them on Monday morning. Within 2 days, I had a new credit card that was FedExed to my door. I don't get the same when I have a fraud issue with other banks. So that's one of those, the phone conversation and that. And it's those cumulative things that I put in, value is, in simplest terms, it's a proportion of benefits to cost. And costs are not just financial. They're the hassles. We talked, if I can't talk to a human being, or if I'm put on wait for 40 minutes, or if I'm stuck in a chat bot and I can't get a straight answer, that's a cost, and I'm frustrated. Those are the best way to improve value is take down the barriers, make it easy 24/7, get to talk to a human being or whatever, or get to type with. But it's those things that Capital One that's doing, and I'm logging this in my relationship as well as the rewards and all the things I'm getting with it. And I'm like, man, there's not another credit card I would use, right? Prove me wrong. And I think, it's understanding that, it's understanding your customer needs. Like this card that I have, it's a travel card. I do a lot of international travel. It comes with lounge access at most every airport I go to. It comes with a reservation. I get 10 times the points with hotel stays, 5 times when I book airline. I wouldn't think of another card to use for travel. But what I love is that card's designed with travelers' needs in mind. And they clearly understand me as a market segment. So, and I can't remember the question that triggered all of this, but, it's understanding, moving from a transactional model and understanding not just the potential revenue that comes with me as a loyal customer, but how that lowers their cost. No longer, I always ask people, tell me about your favorite restaurant and what makes it that way. Now tell me about their advertising. And generally they say, oh, they don't advertise. They don't have to because their customers do it for them, right? And it's like, why aren't we operating that way? It's one thing to create awareness about your brand. I get it. I get the role of advertising. But, like there's a regional coffee chain, a competitor here to Starbucks. And their advertising, their promotional strategies are buy one, get one free, $1 off, whatever. Why do you have to resort to such tactics if you're a great place to go for coffee, right? They must have terrible customer churn if they have to entice people. And then they've been doing this for decades. You never see Starbucks discounting, or they don't have to, right? It's understanding their customer, consistently building their needs.
Yeah, no, I appreciate that, and I think there's some great points there. And I think it's obviously a big part of it is it's different for every organization to measure this, and but it's important to understand the context and to apply those things to your business and to what's important. I really appreciate the conversation, Tom. I've learned a lot, and I think there's been some really, really good points that we've touched off on. I think that there's a lot that the listeners can take away around customer experience management as well. I do just want to get into, I do a finale segment with each guest where I asked 3 questions. So I'd love to get into those now if you don't mind. The first one is, what's one thing you believe businesses are not paying enough attention to right now that will be critical in the next 5 years?
That's a good question. That's a good. Um, and I think we've already touched on that. It's changing customer expectations at a rapid pace.
Yeah.
And technology certainly plays a role in that. We discussed the snowball effect that it's had. I think also it's the difference between different customer groups, whether it's in a B2B setting or whether it's in a B2C setting, and understanding not just what's different about different customer groups, but what needs do they share, and what challenges does each group encounter as they do business with your operation.
Yeah. No, I think that's great, and
Yeah,
I
and
agree.
don't get distracted. I mean, there's a role for AI, and I think businesses tend to fail on the fundamentals. And the other thing is business leaders is recognizing the role of customer experience management and ensuring your business success, and finding a place for it at the table is really, really key.
Yeah. Awesome. The second one is, what legacy do you want to leave in your industry? How do you hope your work will influence or shape the future?
Uh, um, a lot of it I think I've already accomplished. I think the creation of the master's degree in customer experience management, it does a lot of things. I'm really, I always feel, I don't know, humbled by the number of people that are enrolled in the program from very diverse backgrounds, and what they gain from it, and how enlightened they are, and their ability to put what they're learning into practice immediately. I think, to me, that's the most impactful thing. It's not about me being associated with a creation or anything. It's making the difference in the lives of those people. And I think also the degree really helps to formalize the legitimacy of our field. I mean, marketing, obviously, they've got their degrees everywhere, accounting, finance, you name it, HR. And
Yeah.
we never had ours, and it's helping to legitimize our field. So the ability for our graduates to go into the C-suite and to stand toe to toe with people that have MBAs from Harvard or Penn or University of Chicago, and they got their MSCXM from MSU, which arguably is the number one training facility in the world for CX. So that means a lot to me. And even our curriculum, I think our curriculum is the most, what I heard from industry when they look at it, the most quoted word was robust. To me, it serves as a foundation on which to build customer experience management, not CX, but customer experience as a managed function, and so.
Very good. And the final one is, if you could go back in time, what advice would you give to your younger self at the start of your career?
Be more confident. I really didn't find my confidence until I was in my mid-30s. I had a really great boss who believed in me, and his motto, he didn't say it, but basically what he was able to instill in me is, if you can dream it, you can do it.
Awesome.
Had I been confident at a young age, a younger age, but it's that confidence in yourself, and your ability to surround yourself with people who believe in your vision, and that's how you succeed, and not being afraid. I guess when I think about my life, it's largely been about, whether it was in the hospitality industry, which was where I was before academia. But when you see a need, do something about it. Don't wait to be told. Don't think somebody else is going to do it, because more often than not, they're not going to do it.
Yeah.
Yeah. So don't be afraid. And the more people you can get to help you along the way, and that might be another bit of advice, is don't try to do it so much on your own. Even though, you can be a little impatient, but the more you can get other people on board to support you, the lighter the lift's going to be. And it's more rewarding, honestly, to be able to look around. Like even now, as I look at faculty in our program, they do so much more than teach. They're leading faculty retreats. They're editing newsletters that now we're distributing on LinkedIn, and it's really rewarding to see how your team can come together and deliver on your mission.
Very good. Well, I appreciate that, and I appreciate you sharing what you've shared today with us. It's been a good learning experience for me, and appreciate you coming on once again. So if you want to check out any more content for anyone listening, you can check out the Pulse, all the stuff on YouTube or Spotify, anywhere where you get your podcast. It's all there. And you can also check out our learning center at intuji.com as well. And thanks once again, Tom, for coming on the podcast. It was a pleasure.
Thanks for having me.
Thank you.